Testing for YouTube. Testing 1, 2, 3.
Okay, welcome everyone. We will call to order our regular meeting of council, and I'd like to start by acknowledging and recognizing that we work, live, and play in the city of Port Alberni, which is situated on the unceded territories of the Sechot and Hupachesit First Nations. Council, we do have an agenda in front of us. Are there any late items to add? Councillor Solda.
Madam Mayor, I would just like to add, I have a couple of questions on the pool study, so I would like to make some comments or ask questions. Thank you.
Okay, I think without adding that specifically to the agenda, you could ask those questions under council and regional district reports.
Sure.
Thank you. Any other items to add? Councillor Douglas.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a letter regarding our private land that the city owns in the Hole of the Wall property.
Okay, let's add that as new business, item 5.
Thank you.
And any additional items? Any items from our corporate officer?
No late items, Madam Mayor.
Okay, would somebody like to move approval of our agenda? Moved by Councillor Solda, seconded by Councillor Mealy. On the motion, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried, none opposed. And we have minutes from the special meeting held at 11:30 a.m. and the regular meeting held at 2 p.m. on April 8th, as well as the special meeting held at 4 p.m. and 4:30 p.m. on April 15th to be adopted.
Move to adopt.
Adopted by Councillor Solda, seconded by Councillor Mealy. Any comments on the minutes? Seeing none, on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And just wanted to note as well, I should have noted this at the beginning, that we do have Councillor Patola joining us virtually today. So we will move on to our delegations, and we have one delegation today, and that is Corey from MNP Chartered Accountants to present our 2023 financial statements.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for inviting me here today to speak to your financial statements and your audit results. We get the technology going here. I'll attempt to. There we go. So I'll talk briefly about the financial statements for 2023 for the city, talk a little bit about the audit and the audit results, and then I'd be happy to answer any questions at the end. So a reminder that when we're looking at the financial statements here today, that you have them in your reading package as well, we're doing it on a consolidated basis. So the operating, the capital, and the reserve funds all together throughout the year. As you're getting reports from staff, you might get just operations or just capital, but we bring it all together at the end of the year for the 2023 financials. We may have lost the. We'll do that. There we go. Thank you. So firstly, on the balance sheet or the statement of financial position. So this is a snapshot of what was in the accounts at the end of 2023. You can see the city has cash and investments of just over $36 million, total financial assets of $48.4 million, debt, and so some new debt during the year. So it increased from 12.9 to $21 million, and total liabilities of $82 million. So I will explain that big increase from 32 million to 82 million in the next slide. If we take those liabilities away from the financial assets, you get what we call a net debt position. And important to note that that net debt is being created by some new liabilities this year related to asset retirement obligations and an estimate of the city's future costs related to those remediation and cleanup items. Those are a result of a new accounting standard, not anything new that happened at the city this year, just recognizing those liabilities for the first time. Tangible capital assets being managed by the city are up to $200 million. Part of that is recognition of an asset retirement asset, right? So that you're recording an asset for those, as well as the sewer projects and wastewater projects that happened during the year, an accumulated surplus at the end of the year of $167 million. So included in that liability number and the increase year over year is the asset retirement obligation liability. The total estimate that was recorded for 2023 is $42.6 million. 40.3 of that is related to sewage lagoons, both the old lagoons and the new ones that will be part of the sewer project. And an additional $2.3 million is for asbestos and other hazardous materials that would be found in buildings. Again, a reminder that nothing has changed with regard to regulations or the city's plans. You're working on all of those things. The reason we're putting it on now is that the accounting standards required it to go onto the financial statements this year. These numbers, the $42.6 million, we do expect them to change year over year. It's going to be a living, breathing number. If there's changes in regulations, it could increase or decrease the liability. Changes in cost estimates every year as we refine estimates, and changes in inflation and debt rates will also have an impact on this number. So it could go up, could go down year over year. On the income statement side, the statement of operations, so that shows the total activities for the year. There's $59 million of total revenue, up from $46 million in the prior year. Some significant new grants coming in for a sewer project, as well as a growing communities grant that came through in the spring from the province. On the expense side of things, $51.4 million, up from the $42.5 in the prior year. But on an accounting basis, there is still an annual surplus of $7.6 million. Now I say an accounting basis for that surplus because there's lots of adjustments and lots of accruals and things going on in there. It's important then to look at the cash flows of the city and what actually happened in the main bank accounts and see where the spending is happening. The provided by operations line, that's your net cash inflows from all the regular activities of the city. So $13.5 million, up a little bit from the prior year. Capital spending of $16.4 million during the year, up just over $2 million from the prior year. The community forest gave another $300,000 dividend up to the city. You moved $11.8 million into investments. With the increases in interest rates, important to have as much as you can in those investments to earn that rate of return on it. $364,000 of debt repaid on schedule, as well as $8.5 million of new debt proceeds for the capital projects. So for a net cash outflow from the main bank accounts of $6.3 million. But again, important to go back up a couple lines. 11.8 of that is moving it into the investment accounts. Make sure you're earning a good rate of return. And the last slide for the financials is that big accumulated surplus number of $167 million. And what is it? So the biggest amount of that is what we call the equity and capital assets. That's $137 million. So that's the value of all the physical assets and infrastructure managed by the city minus the debt. Then you've got $36 million set aside in reserves. The capital fund has moved into, you can see a negative position there. That's a result of those ARO liabilities, right? That we booked a whole bunch of liabilities there and future costs. And then the operating fund is a small surplus of $955,000. Switching over into the audit and the audit findings, we are providing what we call a modified opinion to the audit report this year. I mentioned the $40 million of sewage lagoon numbers. The city is currently going through the process of refining estimates, getting information on as we go through that project. There is an estimate of the liability in the financial statements. It needs to be refined. It needs to have the engineering reports and things behind it. And I do expect that as you get those reports in, you refine the number for 2024, and we are able to provide an unmodified opinion for 2024. We're ready to sign the report. The last few steps are council approval here today, and then the minor outstanding matters. We always check with legal counsel, make sure there's no hidden liabilities or anything that would result in a liability or a payable for the city. So we have to do those final checks, and they should be coming in this morning. When we're doing our audit and our audit process, we're looking at a few things. We look at the controls in place to make sure you're getting accurate financial reporting. We sample transactions. We use a materiality number to drive our testing. We look at everything that's over that materiality number, and we sample underneath that materiality amount. If there's anything that we find that we disagree with management or we can't get evidence on, I can't give a clean audit opinion if it's larger than that $2.5 million. It is important to note that we don't look at every transaction. We're just sampling to give ourselves comfort. We didn't find any irregularities, anything unusual that I needed to bring to council's attention. No evidence of conflict of interest or unusual transactions. A big thank you to staff in the finance department and throughout the other departments for the city. We really appreciate all the help going through the audit process with us. It goes very smoothly. And I'll wrap up by confirming our independence. MMP as your auditor is required to maintain our independence to be able to give you an objective audit, independent objective audit opinion from January 1st, 2023, the start of the year, all the way through to today. So thank you. I'll stop there. I'm happy to answer any questions if council has any.
Thank you, Corey, for the very clear overview. Are there questions from council? Okay. Seeing no questions, thank you very much. Would somebody like to move or make the motion that's written? Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the auditor's report and the 2023 audited financial statements prepared by MNP Chartered Accountants be received and approved as presented.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Dame. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And moving on to unfinished business, we have 2 items today. Item number 1, Western Vancouver Island Industrial Heritage Commission Railway Operations Update, and this is just the recommendations from the April 15th Committee of the Whole. Are there questions from council? Councillor Mealy, would you like to make the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that council direct staff to enter into a 1-year agreement with the Western Vancouver Island Industrial Heritage Society to operate the Alberni Pacific Railway and amend the city's 2024-2028 5-year financial plan to include $113,935 in the capital budget and $60,000 in the operating budget.
Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Douglas. Any comments? Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just on the question of where the money will be coming from, again, talked about the growing community funds over top of taxation. I just wanted to get clarification.
Thank you. CAO, are you able to confirm that?
Thank you for the question, and through the chair, I believe that the direction on how we were going to put it in the financial plan is through the Growing Communities Fund. The 2 options were the Growing Community Fund or the Forest Reserve.
Thank you. And I know that we did have quite a bit of conversation about this at Committee of the Whole, but just noting that Councillor Patola, I believe, wasn't at the Committee of the Whole, so I just wanted to leave any room, Councillor Patola, for additional comments, if you have any.
Thank you, and no, I don't.
Thank you. Okay, then not seeing any additional comments on the motion, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. Item number 2, we have the Welcome to Port Alberni sign. I'm so happy to see this report coming forward. I will pass it over to our CAO. Sorry, Councillor Dame.
Thank you. I will be recusing myself from this discussion just because I was a part of an initial submission of a sign design. Thank you.
Thank you. Once Councillor Dame exits the room, we'll go to our CAO.
Great, thank you. I think this project started quite a while ago, and with project manager started at the city and looking at the budget. When we brought a budget report forward to council, there was some discussion around the welcome sign, and our project manager took a look at how we could bring it into cost, what we have left in the budget, so under $23,000. And so we did go out, we did modify what the original design was. It's still going to have a little bit of a 3D effect. However, it's going to be less than the original. The original, I believe, was the spacing between the trees and the sign were up to 5 feet or maybe even a little more. Now they're only going to be around a foot apart, and then not pouring all the different concrete. When we initial estimates for concrete were coming in over $60,000, so we're going to be placing it on a large flat rock, and we will fasten it to that rock. Ministry approvals are already in place at out in front of No Frills on Johnson Road. However, in reviewing it, administration also noted that it could be up at the Visitors Center. So again, all the information on the past and how the sign came to be is in the report, and we're open to council's direction.
Thank you very much. Just want to thank staff for going back to this project and re-looking at it, as it is something that's been in the works for quite some time. I wanted to first start by saying this is the design that was put forward in the contest or kind of welcome that the city, call for designs that the city put out, that council did select this design, and recognizing that it's slightly modified. But there was quite a strong support for this sign, and as well for the kind of budget that was attached to it originally, which now we are back into line with, which I think is fantastic. When this project started, I think it was actually before I was the mayor, and I know that it's been talked about in the past prior to that as well, but we've been talking about it pretty consistently for just about 10 years. And it was really intended to have a Welcome to Port Alberni sign at the entrance to Port Alberni. So I understand the somewhat of a desire to put it at the Chamber of Commerce. My strong preference would be that it is at the John Street and Johnston Street intersection in front of Walmart, not No Frills, which I think is what we've been talking about, so assuming that's correct still. I know that tourists don't necessarily care where the entry to our community is, but I see that entrance to that commercial district as really where we start taking care of our community in a different way, where we're able to control what the appearance is. And I think that is technically the entrance to the community as well. So I think that's a nice corner to have the sign on. We know that there is a development coming forward for that corner as well, which I think will be nicely highlighted by this sign. So I would love to see us proceed with this today. I note that the motion written on our agenda is to put it at the Chamber of Commerce, and my request would be that we move forward with the budget as it's already in the capital plan, funded in a prior year, with the sign design, but that it goes in front of Walmart. Comments or questions? Councillor Solda.
It's a much better budget than we were presented with, and the public, I think, will be a lot happier with that, with the now budget that's will be allocated. Are you, Madam Mayor, going to add mention about the other part of it?
Thank you. So the only thing that wasn't in the original design here was, and the submission that came to us was, the City of Port Alberni wanted to put on the unceded traditional territories of Hupachesit and Sashot First Nations. And so I think a slight design amendment has been made to include that at the top of the rocks, so that we will have that written clearly on our sign. I think we should go back and double check with Sashot and Hupachesit, but I would note that we have, because this project I think was funded and approved 3 or 4 years ago, we have already showed them the design and asked them if it was okay if we put unceded territories of Hupachesit and Sashot on it. But since it has been a few years, it would be worth just going back and ensuring that they're in support of that still. Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much to city staff and previous councils for taking this on. It's been discussed many times over the last 20 plus years on having the proper signage. And I'm a big proponent of signage is like my haircut. Cheap and effective really gets it done. So this is in a budget that really works, and I also concur it should be within the city limits. So I will support it if it's at John Street and Johnson Road, and let's have a beautiful sign.
Absolutely. Thank you. Other comments? Go ahead, Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll make a motion then that the Council for the City of Port Alberni approve a slightly modified Welcome to Port Alberni sign and its installation at John Street and Johnston Road, as per the staff report dated April 11th, 2024, to be completed within the allocated financial plan amount, $23,194.
Thank you. I'll second that. And I think just as well for the public's awareness, this is a prior year funded project, so not something that we're adding to our financial plan. I think it was funded in 2020. Yeah, that's great. Okay, any other comments on the motion? Seeing none, on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you. And would somebody go grab Councillor Dame? Okay, welcome back, Councillor Dame, and we will go to staff reports. Item number 1 is accounts. Councillor Solda.
Madam Mayor, I move that the certification of the Director of Finance dated April 22nd, 2024 be received in checks numbered 154704 to 154776, inclusive, in payment of accounts totaling $1,342,520.74 be approved.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Solda, seconded by Councillor Mealy. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And item number 2, Broom Busters Community Event. Go to our corporate officer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So further to council direction, at the February 12th regular meeting, staff have worked with Broom Busters to establish a community broom busting event. So there is an advertisement that will be going out in this Wednesday's Alberni Valley newspaper, along with the city's social media sites, that the event will be held on Saturday, May 4th from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m., asking volunteers to meet behind Echo Center, BYOC, Bring Your Own Clippers. Yeah, we're just looking for a great event to cut down the broom behind there. Time permitting, there are some alternate locations, and we do have our park staff prepared to be picking up the large piles of broom. Thank you.
Great, thanks. And I will just note that Broom Busters was active in the community this weekend as well, and just want to recognize and thank those volunteers. As we know, broom has become a big issue on Vancouver Island, and it takes a lot of volunteer effort to continue to get it under control, but some communities have been super effective at being able to do that, and it certainly isn't without the help of staff, but certainly all of the volunteers that do come out continually and help to get this problem under control. And just clarifying that no specific direction is needed from council. Okay, any other comments? Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just really quickly, this was a topic of discussion during the BC wildfire section of the AVICC just this last, the weekend prior. And they did notice BC Wildfire says that there's no provincial program that addresses this, but acknowledges it is an issue, and the community is picking up the slack. So thank you very much to the Broom Busters for all they do in this community and throughout Vancouver Island to help us with the BC wildfire situation.
Absolutely. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to bylaws, and we will go to item number 1, and this is our tax rate bylaw, and this is just final adoption. I will go to Councillor Solda. Would you like to read this one?
Madam Mayor, I move that the City of Port Alberni tax rates bylaw number 5104 2024 being now finally adopted, signed by the mayor and corporate officer, and numbered 5104.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Dame. Any comments? Seeing none. On the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you. And just wanted to thank all staff, but specifically our Director of Finance for all of the work, as always, as we go through budget. But I know this was a specifically challenging year with a lot of questions, so thanks for all the extra work that was put in there. We'll move on to item number 2, zoning bylaw amendment for 5350 Margaret Street.
A point of
Councillor
order, if I
Dame.
may. I also have to recuse myself for this agenda item, so thank you.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. For Council's consideration today is a zoning application at
Madam Mayor?
53.
Point of order.
Yes. Councillor Patola, sorry, you were just a voice in the sky coming at us. I wasn't sure if it was you at first, so go ahead.
Well, it's not the second coming, it's just me. Just a point of order. I think it's probably obvious from the notation on the screen, the applicant for this zoning amendment. Although usually when a councillor recuses themselves, they do give a reason why. And I know that Mr. Councillor Dame has left, probably appropriately. I just didn't know what the reason was specifically.
Thank you. And it is because the applicant is a family member. So thanks for pointing that out. And we'll work on that in the future.
Okay, so just to restart just a little bit. So the application today is a rezoning application at 5350 Margaret Street and a zoning amendment bylaw 5101, and the applicant is Brad Dame. You can see the property located on this map surrounded by a yellow box. It's at the corner of Margaret and Pleasant Road, just south of Sumas Elementary School. And the application is requesting to rezone that property that was outlined in yellow to R3 small lot single detached residential. And the idea is that if the rezoning is successful, they could then apply for a subdivision to create 3 small lots. And just a reminder that the small lot single detached residential zone, back in the previous zoning bylaw, that was called the single family zone. We just updated the language to single detached, but it is that traditional single house format. Here's a map that explains the rezoning application. So the property outlined in red is the one that would be rezoned to small lot single family residential. And then the other 2 lots just to the north, also owned by the applicant, would remain P1 institutional. And that used to be a church, which is now being used as a daycare. And the properties in red were formerly used as a parking lot, and those would be redeveloped according to the plan you see just to the right of the slide, where it shows the 3 lots that would be potentially be created. So in terms of the official community plan, the properties are designated as residential in the OCP, and the R3 zoning does align with that residential land use that's stated in the plan. And the OCP policy within the document does support residential infill that is compatible with the surrounding neighborhood, and this low density of development is compatible with that surrounding neighborhood. As you can see from the map, it's all that same yellow color. Now, also, this proposal is for housing, and the proposal is consistent with the OCP. That's a determination that staff have made. It's compatible with the residential land use designation and with those policies for residential land use. And under the new legislation in the Local Government Act, it does mean that a public hearing cannot be held. The R3 zone, again, it does align with the surrounding low-density neighborhood. The size of these lots meets the requirements of that R3 zone, and those 2 remaining properties at the north would stay as P1, where it's got the daycare, but those 2 lots would be consolidated into one at subdivision. The new BC legislation is worth considering for this application and future applications because these residential lots, when this new legislation is changed, when our bylaws are updated to meet the new legislation, up to 4 units will be permitted on most residential lots in the city, including these 3. The city's current zoning bylaw doesn't include that yet, but we have to have it updated by this July, so that'll be forthcoming. And infrastructure and servicing requirements will be determined later at the subdivision stage. Back in January, staff presented this application to the Advisory Planning Commission, and they did make a motion recommending that council support the rezoning. And the new legislation that governs public hearings does require that we give public notice prior to first reading when a public hearing is not being held. So we advertise this in the newspapers, we advertise it online, posted it on the city's bulletin board on the city's website, and we mailed 50 letters to the surrounding neighborhood, to occupants and owners of property. We did receive 2 responses in return. One of them contained concern for the height of the building and reduced access to sunlight on neighboring properties. There was concern that the lots might be too small. And there was also a concern around available street parking just because the school and the daycare are nearby. And in particular, they did mention the school, and during events, the street parking does get used. Council's options for today are to introduce the bylaw and give it first, second, and third reading. Council may also decline to give first reading, which means the application does not proceed, and council may direct staff to provide additional information. And staff are recommending option 1, which is to introduce the bylaw and give it first, second, and third reading. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the report. Are there questions from council? Councillor Solda.
Just a quick question regarding the parking. So how is that being solved? Because there is a lot of traffic in that area, so just kind of curious.
Madam Mayor, through to Councillor Solda. So these three properties, if they're created, would be required to provide the same amount of parking as any other residential lot, which in the bylaw right now currently is, I believe it is 2 stalls per house. And they would have to be on the property, not on the street.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is with regards to this application, just to clarify, this application is simply the change in zoning and it's not the subdivision of creating the 3 lots. Am I correct about that?
Through Madam Mayor to Councillor Patola, that's absolutely correct. So it is just the rezoning. And if the rezoning is successful, then they could make a subdivision application to create those lots. And that would still have to be approved by the approving officer.
And Madam Mayor, that thank you. My second question is: once the subdivision application envisioned is brought forward, what is the process for approving that? Does it come back to council? Does it have any public hearings? Mostly, my concern is the size of the lots and the amount of units that we're putting on a relatively small area.
Thank you. Brian, did you want to comment on the process?
Through Madam Mayor to Councillor Patola. So the process doesn't involve council. It can be approved by the approving officer. And so they would submit a layout and a preliminary layout, and then they would have a year basically to get all their engineering done. It would come back for final approval, and the approving officer, who is the Director of Development Services, may or may not approve that subdivision. The important thing to remember is that these lots right now, they do meet the minimum dimensions of the R3 zone. So they could create these lots under the current bylaw. It's also worth considering that under provincial legislation, staff will be bringing forward zoning bylaw amendments in order to meet that new legislation, which will involve changes to the R3 zone, but that will be for council to consider at that time.
Thank you. So Councillor Patola, if there are concerns around lot size, this is the process to bring those up in for sure.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And my concern is around lot size, that at four units per lot, it's not so much the lot size, but it's that on an area that previously housed cars on a Sunday morning, now it houses potentially 12 different families. Not just 12 individuals, but 12 families plus their cars, being 2 per unit. So that's 24 parking stalls. Seems very crowded to me. And I think that 3 lots on this space might be a bit of an imposition on the neighborhood, that 2 lots might be a better design for keeping the somewhat be progressive, yet keep the nature of the neighborhood as well.
Thank you. Other comments? Councillor Douglas.
Thank you. I'd be happy to make the motion if I may, and a seconder, and then further discussion if we wish. So I'd like to make a motion that zoning amendment 5350 Margaret Street bylaw number 5101 be now introduced and read a first time.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Mealy. Any comments? Okay, seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And Councillor Douglas, if you want to continue.
If I may, I'd like to make a motion that zoning amendment 5350 Margaret Street bylaw number 5101 be read a second time.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Douglas, seconded by Councillor Mealy. Any comments? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And Councillor Douglas.
And I'd like to make a motion that zoning amendment 5350 Margaret Street bylaw number 5101 be read a third time.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Douglas, seconded by Councillor Mealy. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Okay, thank you for the information, planner, and we will move on to correspondence for action. Oh, and we'll call Councillor Dane back to the room. And under correspondence for action, we've got item number 1, a letter dated March 27th, 2024 from Riders of the Alberni Valley requesting council support for application to the province of BC for a land use agreement. And I will just go to our corporate officer for just an overview on this issue.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. One moment while I pull this up. Okay, so yes, the Riders of the Alberni Valley have ambitions to create and maintain cycling and multi-use trails, as well as provide events and recreation opportunities for members of the community and tourists. And so they are in the process of making an application for a land use agreement with the province, specifically for this application to maintain and possibly build multi-use trails on Crown land above and around the McQuina Trail system. And so they are just looking to council to provide a letter of support within their application package.
Thank you very much. I think this is an excellent initiative and always great when we have volunteers in the community and community enthusiasts and cycling enthusiasts coming forward to create or to push for this. My only question is if this would interact with our existing McQuina area trails, or if we know that yet, if we have kind of concepts on where they're looking and if it's suitable in conjunction with the trails that are there, or if we would need to make changes. CAO.
Yeah, thanks for the question. My understanding is this is up in the area above Argyle and up above the trails of the city, so it would tie into the upper trails that are currently existing. Some of them are in the city proper, but then they blend into the ACRD and some of the woodlots above.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Haggard.
I'd like to move that council direct staff to prepare a letter to the province on behalf of Riders of Alberni Valley in support of their application for a land use agreement to maintain and possibly build multi-use trails on Crown land throughout the McQuina Trail system.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Haggard, seconded by Councillor Solda. Additional comments? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you. And item number 2, we have a letter dated April 9th from the Rotary Club of Port Alberni requesting the use of Blair Park and Kitsaxis Dyke Trail. And I do just note that we have a representative from Rotary here. If you wanted to come forward and just provide a bit of an update of what you're looking to do and a great opportunity to talk about the event for the community.
Thank you. Yeah, so what we're trying to do on July 20th of this year, we want to kind of create a festival atmosphere at Blair Park with a 2.5 kilometer walk around the dike. It will be, I'm not sure if you've seen these color runs before. This is more of a walk instead of a run. And we'll have about 5 or 6 color stations. So as people walk around the trail, they'll get color thrown on them. And it should be a fun, exciting afternoon. And we're hoping to include some vendors, some food trucks, and some activities for our families.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And thanks for your work in organizing this event for the community.
Thanks.
Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll make the motion that council authorize the Rotary Club of Port Alberni use of Blair Park and Kitsaxis Dyke Trail on Saturday, July 20th, 2024 from 10 in the morning to 3 p.m. for the purpose of a Color Fest fundraiser event with which proceeds will be used to support local youth groups subject to the following conditions: a signed agreement with Parks, Recreation and Culture Department, consultation with all affected businesses and residents, provision of standard liability insurance in the amount of $5 million minimum.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Dame. Any comments? Councillor Douglas.
Just to add, it's really nice news to hear as well that this Rotary group is working with the second Rotary group that we have in the community too. So it's just really great to like to give them kudos for working together and partnering on this.
Absolutely. Okay, seeing no additional comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you. Moving on to item number 3, we have ADSS 2024 Parent Prom Committee, use of city streets. And I think this is a standard one that we get every year, just use of the city streets for the grad parade. Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the council authorize the Alberni District Secondary School 2024 Parent Prom Committee access to city streets on Saturday, June 22nd, 2024, from 5 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. for the purposes of a prom parade from Bird Street to 10th Avenue to Rogers Street, ending at the Athletic Hall, which is 3727 Rogers Street, subject to the notification of emergency services and BC Transit, consultation with all affected businesses and residents, implementation of a traffic safety plan to be approved by the City of Port Alberni, including qualified traffic control personnel as required, and provision of standard liability insurance in the amount of $5 million minimum.
Thank you.
I'll second
Seconded
that.
by Councillor Haggard. And any comments from council? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you. Moving on to proclamations. Item number 1, we have several today. Item number 1, an email dated March 28th, 2024 from Vancouver Island Economic Alliance requesting that certain days be proclaimed as Island Good Days. And I note that we have our economic development manager here. Some people probably don't know what Island Good is. Pat, would you mind just coming up and really briefly letting us promoting the program that they've put forward, as I think there's a ton of value, but it hasn't gotten a lot of talk in the community.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Island Good is an initiative of the Vancouver Island Economic Alliance to promote primarily island foods, island beverages. It is starting to branch out as a more generic brand, but we have been in support of this initiative, and 4 years ago now, we invested almost $2,000 in licenses for businesses in the Alberni Valley that were either producing those goods or using those goods in their businesses. And the Alliance has done a study suggesting that the campaign is adding jobs throughout the food and beverage industry on the island. So they're ramping up the campaign with an annual Island Good Days.
Thank you. And Pat, if we have businesses in the Alberni Valley who have not registered for the program, is that something they're able to do still? Is it ongoing, I assume?
Yes. And in fact, there are businesses that are reaching out. One earlier this week, I guess they've seen the interest in the campaign. So any business that is interested in applying for Island Good designation can reach out to Vancouver Island Economic Alliance, and then they check back with us to make sure that we approve of their use of the logo.
Great, thanks, Pat. I think this is just a really great initiative that was started a few years ago to really highlight all of the good, all of the good work that we do have going on Vancouver Island with local businesses, creating things here. So happy to support. Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Move the council on behalf of the Vancouver Island Economic Alliance proclaim the week June 3rd to 9th, 2024 as Island Good Days in Port Alberni.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Haggard. Any comments? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And on to item number 2, a letter dated March 28th, 2024 from United Steelworkers requesting a proclamation. I will go to Councillor Haggard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move that council, on behalf of United Steelworkers Local 11937, proclaim April 28, 2024 as Day of Mourning in Port Alberni, and that the National Day of Mourning flag be flown at City Hall at half-mast on April 28th and throughout the following week in respect of those who have died on the job.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Haggard, seconded by Councillor Solda. Any comments or questions? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Okay, and item number 3, an email dated April 8th, 2024 from the Falan Dafa Association of Vancouver requesting a proclamation. Would somebody like to move this one? Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was just going to do a motion to receive, if that's okay.
Absolutely. Okay, motion to receive. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Dame. And comments? Oh, Councillor Patola, thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would certainly be in support of the motion to receive. I would actually, following that, I'll be making a motion to write the letter of support. Falun Gong is an interesting group, but it's whether or not you agree with their philosophies or not, they certainly are a group of people that have been subject to violence and oppression. And they are certainly a group of people that are attempting to lead a life apart from that oppression and simply follow their beliefs. I don't see that group as being any different from any other philosophical, religious, or cultural group that we would support in achieving a healthy life away from oppression. So I'd be in support of actually writing that letter because it doesn't, in my mind, differ at all from supporting any other group of people that have been underrepresented and underachieved. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patola. Any other comments? Okay, and I will just add that I know this is something that we have proclaimed several times in the past. And I haven't personally heard any negative feedback from the community, so I'll leave it at that. On the motion to receive, all in favor? None opposed. And Councillor Patola, I think you noted making another motion, so you're welcome to.
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you. I don't have the document right in front of me, but I would make the motion as written to send a letter of support. I don't think we need to send a video that they requested, but send a letter of support to Falun Gong and make the proclamation of Falun Gong Day as they have indicated.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Solda. Comments? Councillor Haggard.
It may have been approved by council years previously, but I know we started last year not supporting this motion, so I think there has been at least 2 or 3 years that we have not supported it.
Okay. Other comments? Councillor Dane.
Thank you. Yeah, to be frank, I did some research, but it just seems like there's some political things tangled up in here that I just don't know enough about to support making this declaration for my community. So just in that light, I won't be supporting it.
Thank you. And I personally don't have an issue supporting it, but at the same time, I would agree I don't have enough information. And some of these proclamations come to us with very minimal information and really not an awareness, I think, of what they mean for the community or not. So I think my only comment would be, I know that we have talked about reducing the number of proclamations requests that come to the community and really making them more local to the community rather than accepting from outside organizations. I think based on what I've heard from Councillor Patola, I would love to just support, proclaim the day, no harm. I think based on Councillor Patola's representation, I would absolutely support the proclamation, but I don't have enough information if there is potential other consequences, and I think that is sometimes the challenge of our proclamations, the proclamation requests coming to us from organizations that we're not familiar with because they're not necessarily local to the community. I could be wrong in saying it's not local to the community. I recognize that this is a Vancouver-based group, but I don't know about the representation in our community. So I will just pass it back to Councillor Patola if there's any additional comments before we vote.
No, I don't have any further additional comments. I think I'd just be restating myself. Thank you.
Thank you. Then on the motion, all in favor? Opposed? Motion defeated. Thank you. Okay, and we will move on to item number 4, which is an email dated April 13th, 2024 from MS Canada Ambassadors Executive requesting a proclamation. What's that? Councillor Douglas.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to make a motion that Council, on behalf of MS Canada, proclaim the month of May 2024 as MS Awareness Month in Port Alberni and authorize that the MS flag be flown at City Hall the week of May 6th in recognition. Thank you.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Douglas, seconded by Councillor Solda. Any comments on this one? Seeing none. On the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Move on to correspondence for information, and I'll go to our corporate officer for an overview.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have a number of items, starting with a response from the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure, and that's in response to a city letter sent regarding the log train trail. We have a response to our letter dated March 13th regarding an amendment of the air discharge permit for Catalyst Paper, and that's from the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change Strategy. We have a second letter from the Ministry of Environment regarding a public interest bonding strategy. We also have 2 letters from the Ministry of Housing with regards to the changes coming up with housing legislation. So one related to Bill 16 for proactive zoning framework, and another related to small-scale multi-unit housing legislation. There's an invitation from BC Ferries to the Charting the Course workshop. There's a quarterly report from the Office of the Ombudsperson from October 1st to December 31st. We do have another response from the Ministry of Forest to our letter dated March 15th regarding enhanced provincial support for Port Alberni Paper Mill. We also have the highlights from the Board of Directors meetings at the ACRD for February and March, an invitation to McHappy Day happening on May 8th. We also have the March 5th minutes of the Accessibility Committee, minutes of the Heritage Commission from March 6th, and the July 19th, 2023 and January 17th, 2024 Traffic Advisory Committee minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Council, are there any questions or comments? Councillor Haggard.
I have already volunteered for McHappy's Days from 8 till 9 o'clock on the Johnson Road location. So please come and see me and I'll be happy to serve you a cup of coffee.
Thank you, Councillor Haggard. Any other comments? Council, I will just note, since there are letters in here regarding our letters to Catalyst, just for information, that myself and Mayor Rob Douglas, I always want to call him Rob Duncan, Mayor of North Cowichan, not Duncan, so it's just too confusing why my brain does that. But myself and Mayor Rob Douglas from North Cowichan did have a meeting with Minister Andrew Mercier, who is the Minister of State, specifically tasked with addressing the fiber shortage issue for the forest sector. Did have a meeting there specifically to discuss fiber for Catalyst and some of the challenges that the industry is having and those impacts on our community. I have had an additional meeting with Andrew Mercier on the same topic, and at that meeting we had the regional district and Sashot-and-Hupachesit represented there as well. I think Minister Mercier is a fantastic, energetic minister tasked with this file very recently, and is really dedicated to looking at, I would say, creative and innovative solutions to improve some of what we see as challenges in the industry, where we have a fiber supply shortage at Catalyst and we have slash burning happening just off the highway in our community, fiber that could be used at Catalyst in some cases. So it was a good, productive meeting, and I think we had a few follow-ups, and we'll continue to advocate for some of those challenges in the community, and Catalyst Paper and all that they do contribute to the community. So I'll just leave that for information. Okay, not seeing any other comments on the correspondence. Would somebody like to move receipt? Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Dame. On the motion, all in favor? Carried, thank you. And I'll go to our corporate officer just to read out an overview of the reports from in camera.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So we have a release for public consumption from the Office of the Information and Privacy Commissioner regarding Order F24-23 and related redacted documents regarding an information request for records. And we also have release for public consumption notice of termination for the contribution agreement between the City of Port Alberni and the Canadian Mental Health Association, BC Division, Community Action Initiative, and further to that the unspent funds be returned to Community Action Initiative. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to council reports. Would anybody like to highlight any council activities? And I know there was a question around the pool, so maybe I'll go to Councillor Solda for that question, and then myself and Councillor Haggard potentially can answer it.
So, Madam Mayor, at some regional district meetings, the pool study has been brought out to the public already, and what I want to say is that this council has not seen it. We received a copy last night from Councillor Haggard, and this will be our first time seeing it unless we watch the regional district committee presenting it to the regional district. And it's disappointing that it didn't come to us first and it was let out to the public and before it came to us. It was on the radio. The radio has had pictures on it, and I'm just a little disappointed that, and I know it's not our rep's fault at all, it's just how the process worked. And I just wanted to bring that forward. And so the public realizes this council has not seen it, read it. And I would love to know when we are going to get someone coming to this council at a committee of a whole and talk about the study itself.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's a really good note that throughout the process, there actually have been several kind of check-ins that have been made at the regional district, and we're not necessarily having similar presentations or getting information packages to the city. As the local government that will pay the vast majority of a pool if it does move forward, it really should come to us as well, not necessarily a separate presentation, but at least an overview of the information that's being presented to the regional district. So I think we'd be happy to take that back to the regional district and ask that when they bring an update to the ACRD board, that they provide the same information to council. Myself and Councillor Haggard can certainly summarize some of it, but not in the same detail that it's being presented to that local government. I will just say that I think that what we have heard pretty loud and clear from all communities of the Alberni Valley throughout this process is a strong support for a pool, an aquatic center being built, and additionally for that being a service that is supported and funded by the whole regional district. There's been a number of different ways that feedback has been taken, a number of different ways that it's been measured in terms of how much are residents willing to pay in which different areas and who wants to contribute to what. But residents of the Alberni Valley have provided quite a strong level of support for not only building a new aquatic center, but funding in a way that is equitable a new aquatic center. So I've taken it to be very positive. At this point, I think the kind of proposal that we're working forward on is for wave pool, 6 lanes, I think 25-meter lanes, sauna and steam room. I can't remember the other amenities, but yeah, so we will see if we can get an update to be presented to council. I think it would be a good time for that. Go ahead, Councillor Haggard, or sorry, Councillor Solda, and then I'll go to Councillor Haggard.
Just to follow up. So I'm assuming it's going to come to the committee of the whole to have some discussion, and will we be able to ask questions? Because I'll have some questions once I read the report, and I would really like to go from there.
Yeah, I think what we'll do is we will request that staff from the regional district bring forward a report. I'm thinking of one that was presented to the regional district a month or so ago that has good information, or maybe when we go to the next step with regional district, the same information could be provided to council as well. Councillor Haggard.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Sola, for bringing that up. To this point, the only action that the Aquatic Committee has taken is to a consultant has done several surveys and compiled those surveys and presented the results of those surveys to the Aquatic Committee. The committee meetings are public. They are televised on YouTube, free for anybody to watch, and all the reports have been on the regional district website, so nothing has been secret. I have not presented anything because nothing has gone to the board. I like to go through process step by step, so no decisions have been made as of to date on anything by anybody.
Thank you. And just to add to that, this is going to be a long community process. Nothing is moving forward today, and it's being the recommendations that will be put forward as a result of feedback from the whole community, certainly not just city residents. So I know there was some discussion online today about the city wanting an expensive pool and forcing it on the regional district areas, and that's certainly not what is happening. Feedback is being measured in every individual area, and to date, what we've seen in reports of that feedback has been reasonably consistent support throughout every area, not just the city of Port Alberni. Thank you. Any other additional items people would like to comment on under council reports? Councillor Douglas.
Thank you. Yeah, I won't quote the whole thing, but just part of my report, and then I was going to hope to call on our Mr. Deacon for an additional aspect to that. So I was privileged to go to the Kofi conference in Vancouver recently, First Nations, housing, homelessness, climate change, wildfire challenges, and really the big topic was innovation. And although there was an initial perception of sort of doom and gloom, it was actually a very, very positive conference, and I came away feeling really strongly about it. And the number of individuals that I was happy to meet, executives, are really embracing the new sort of attitude of working together and of finding ways to make forestry work in a sustainable and a climate action provable sort of way to bring good economies to our province. So I was really happy to go to that, and really appreciated the opportunity to represent council on that. Some other prime topics, which was also really refreshing, was the recently announced ISCOM Investing Group, headed of approximately 20 First Nations, and our local Robert Dennis is the chairperson of that organization. He spoke to it, as well as a number of other First Nation people spoke on that topic, and really talked strongly about how they believe, as well as everybody else, that everyone has to work together to make forestry successful once again. One of the neat quotes was that we get to look at what people have done in Finland, what we've done in Sweden, and now we can look at it in Canada and move ahead. The other interesting concept that came out of there was district energy. And we had some good conversations about how we had contemplated that in the past in Port Alberni, and how it could be something that'd be very vital for us to move forward on as well. And that, for people who don't know, is where you take an energy production facility and distribute it around the large consumers, such as the multiplex, our new swimming pool, and all those sort of things, the high schools. So that was really good. And one of the other things as a benefit is you get to meet a lot of staff from the province, from Victoria, that were here. So I got to sit around the table with a number of people from the Ministry of Forests. And incidental to that, with the mass timber thing, we got this book here that I was going to add to our library at City Hall here, all about mass timber and cross-nominated timber. Thought it might occupy a good place in our coffee table in the lobby. But some conversations about the community forest, and there have been some people trying to bring some initiatives through the community forest to put on a workshop to invite players in this community and from without to try and bring some innovation and come up with new ideas. And on that topic, I was hoping I could call on Mr. Deacon if he had a few comments about what's been going on in that area, if that's okay with council.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, councillors. So first off, I would like to commend you and your council for the number of opportunities you've taken to reach out to the province in particular to advocate on behalf of our industries here for additional fiber and fiber at a reasonable cost. So I want to make it clear that I'm aware through a whole number of different channels that this council has been advocating for that, for industry. And then second, I'd like to also thank and commend our MLA who has taken a real interest in this issue and has reached out to Bob Simpson, the former mayor of Quesnel, a former MLA. And Quesnel, a number of years ago, just at the prior to the outset of the pandemic, had instituted a think tank around the issue of fiber, and they approached it in a very interesting manner. It was based around what will the land base support, how do we sustain the land base, how do we prepare the labor force for new roles in the industry, addressing the innovation topic. And the focus was around what can we do together. And so the community forest, or at least has been also taking a look at that initiative and is going to be asking the city that we work together to that end. And as I say, I'm aware that you, Madam Mayor, and Council have taken every opportunity to bring this issue forward. We will, and in my role as Economic Development Manager, although Council's corporate strategic plan is focused on small business, and it's the larger businesses, or Catalyst and San in particular, that are the ones that are really hurting. I do, with the CAO's knowledge, reach out and make inquiries and move on behalf. And in fact, we're fortunate in that the MLAs, that actually her assistant in the ministry, her former ministry, has just been moved over to Ministry of Forests in a capacity there. So I've already reached out to him this morning and are continuing that dialogue, but we'll work with the community forest on anything that they want to bring forward.
And thank you, Pat. Just to sum up, so community forest, which I'm the liaison on, has been really working diligently on coming up with, what Pat Ackery describes like a think tank idea to try and get some ideas percolating. So we're just hoping, I'm asking on behalf of them, is that council will have their blessing to, carry on conversations with Mr. Deacon and see what they can come up with.
Thank you very much. Any questions or follow-ups on that from council? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much, Pat. Okay, would somebody like to move receipt of our council and regional district reports? Thank you. Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Dame. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. We'll move on to new business. Item number 1, we have policy release of in-camera resolutions. This is from the recommendation from the April 15th Committee of the Whole. Would somebody like to move this? Thanks. Moved by Councillor Solda as written and seconded by Councillor Mealy. Any comments or questions on this? Seeing none, on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And item number 2, we have official community plan, another recommendation from April 15th Committee of the Whole. Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that council support the official community plan growth and climate action, what we heard report as presented, and further, that council support the alternative growth scenario and GHG reduction targets as per the staff report dated April 15th, 2024.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Dame. Comments on this? I just wanted to thank staff in the planning department and the consultant for the work that's been done on this so far. And I really enjoyed, I couldn't be here in person, but really enjoyed the conversation that council had when this was reported at the Committee of the Whole. I'm optimistic about the official community plan and just what's going to come forward, but just to plug as well for as that engagement does continue over time in the community to follow along, and we'll do our best to update when there are more opportunities for engagement within the community, or certainly at council meetings, as well as the official community plan is the most important document that we have for our community, and need to continue to get input on it. With that, on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And item number 3, we have a report dated April 11th from the Director of Finance requesting council authorization to execute the BC Transit Annual Operating Agreement. Andrew.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So annually, we bring forward the operating agreement for council to execute. The cost and revenue is already considered within the current financial plan, and we're just seeking council's approval today to sign that agreement.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the mayor and corporate officer be authorized to execute the BC Transit 2024-2025 annual operating agreement between the City of Port Alberni, British Columbia Transit as attached to the staff report dated April 11th, 2024, in effect from April 1st, 2024 to March 31st, 2025.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Solda. Just wanted to note on this, I think the study going on with BC Transit is still active online. I think for a few.
It's finished now.
It has finished now? Okay. So I know that it was shared by the city and shared by members of council as well. I hope that in the future, BC Transit will do a little bit more community engagement, even kind of notifying us ahead of time. I think we all as councillors sort of saw that online and weren't really expecting it. And I saw it shared in AB Chatterbox the first time I saw it. These opportunities for engagement about the future of our transit system are super important. And I thank BC Transit for taking the opportunity to engage. But just note that it was sort of a hard to find survey from the public, and once we became aware of it, we did all share it, but yeah, it was, BC Transit could have done better for sure. So in that study, I noted that they talked about transit options out Beaver Creek, transit options to Sprout Lake, and a potential future transit option to tie into the east coast of the island system that currently goes from Qualicum, I think, to the Cowichan Valley. So a pretty broad service that exists there that I think over time would be worth exploring us tying in. So a lot of really important conversations there. And again, I just think it's really important that our community comes out and engages. And I go back to when this came to, when the expanded potential service to Sprout Lake came to the regional district a year or two ago, the feedback from the community was we had no idea this was being talked about, and the regional district board really kind of used that to say we're not interested in the service. I'm glad that the conversations have continued, because I know from city residents that many people do want better access to Sprout Lake, better access to different areas of the valley. I know we've heard from Sachot as well that service would be, going through their area would likely be of great value. So I think these important conversations are very critical for us to be having and really engaging our community in a more meaningful way, especially as we continue to grow, so that we can plan a transit system that will serve our community into the future. And I did also hear from some specifically Beaver Creek residents through this process who appreciated that they were being considered in a possible expansion out Beaver Creek. I think that are tied into the Walmart area. So yeah, I think these conversations are important for our community, and just want to thank everyone who did share that survey as we found out about it, but hoping in conversations with BC Transit that we can ask them to be kind of more engaged at the forefront when these type of public engagements are going on, as I don't think any of us really knew about it. Any other comments on the agreement? Seeing none, on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And item number 4, we have a report from the Director of Finance on asset retirement obligations.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So in continuing the conversation regarding the asset retirement obligations that M&P had brought forward in their reports, I felt it was important that we have the opportunity to discuss that a little bit more. And if there's any questions from council, we could provide some answers or follow up if required. So looking at the cost or the liability that are planned in the future, it is really 94% is accounted within the sewage lagoons, and that includes both of the lagoons, even our brand new lagoon that we've just had completed this past in 2023. So with that, that's looking at the cost that it would be based on that retirement in the future of 30 years. Or 45 years, so we still have some uncertainty with those numbers, but the asset retirement obligations are our best guess for future retirement. And this includes every single building that we are currently using that might be at the end of its life as far as our amortization, but we had to look at how much longer we would be using these facilities given the condition right now and some of the upgrades that we've done. So they might be fully amortized. We've added the value of the asset retirement obligation to these assets and the liability. That's how it's been introduced into the financial statement. So now it kind of offsets. We have a credit and a debit, and now that new value is being amortized over the next 15 or 10 years, depending on what building it is. So the 4 larger buildings that we do have that have some asbestos remediation that would have to be considered at end of life is City Hall, Echo Center. Those facilities that were built in the 60s, such as the Fire Hall, those are all buildings that we would be looking at future costs for this remediation. These are legal requirements now. It's improving the accounting standards so that we have these future liabilities in there, and council has these when they consider making decisions on these facilities as far as, if we do get a free building, what are the costs of that free building into the future? So just an improvement, and I hope council understands that these are estimates and we'll refine these, especially with the sewage lagoons, and bring that back within the next year so we can change the modified opinion on the financial statements for that uncertainty with the lagoons. So,
Thank you very much. Are there questions or comments from council? Okay. Councillor Solda, would you like to read the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the asset retirement obligations for the period ending December 31st, 2023 be received as outlined in the staff report dated April 17th, 2024.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Solda, seconded by Councillor Mealy. Any comments? Seeing none, on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you very much, Director of Finance. And we will move on to hole in the wall. Councillor Solda. No, sorry, Councillor Douglas.
Who would have thought? Yeah. Thank you. I have a motion I'd like to advance, and the reason I'm advancing the motion at this point because it's an issue that we've covered just recently, but I'm happy to frame it as a notice of motion if council wishes. I'll just read out the motion that I've got crafted here, that the City of Port Alberni follow up on the issue of safe access to our 2 privately owned lands, known collectively as Hole in the Wall, with a letter to Mosaic, to the Ministry of Transportation, and to the representative from Cherry Creek regarding our concern over safe access. And if we can get a seconder, I'd be happy to elaborate on it.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Douglas, seconded by Councillor Solda.
Thank you. And the issue here is just, from what I understand, and it's very understandable, the regional district is a large organization that has many priorities. And so this has been moved still within their strategic plan, but not going to be attended to immediately. And I just feel it'd be very prudent for us to write this letter reminding the people involved that we are very concerned about the safe access and that we've been fortunate not to have a fatality on that road crossing to this point, and that we would, as the private owners of the land within that private land, we would like something to be done, or very willing to work with the parties in order to help it move forward.
Thank you. Comments? I'll just highlight that I know we did recently write a letter to the regional district requesting that they sort of take advantage of an opportunity where there was some community upset over the logging that happened next to the cemetery, with a lack of buffer being built in there, and that we asked the regional district to kind of advance conversations, given that it was potentially opportunistic to take advantage of some of that upset in the community and ask Mosaic to turn that space into a parking lot. The regional district, I didn't receive our letter well. They were a bit frustrated that the city was asking them to take on an issue that they had previously determined to not be an issue, a priority for this year. So I want to be cognizant of the fact that the regional district clearly does not want us to interject ourselves in this community. In this conversation. But I will just note that I think we have an obligation as the city of Port Alberni and partial landowners of a portion of that trail to express our concern about there not being safe access to it. I would say that from the city's perspective, safe access to the hole in the wall, given that we know people are using it, whether there is safe access or not, people will continue to use it. Safe access to that area is absolutely a priority for the city, whether it's a priority for the regional district this year or not. I appreciate that the regional district directors have determined that they will relook at it next year, and I think that there's a genuine desire from the regional district to look at it next year, but I want to support Councillor Douglas in this motion in just saying that next year may not be soon enough when we're talking about something that we know to be a really, I would say, serious safety issue. So thanks, Councillor Douglas, for bringing this forward, and I'm certainly happy to support it. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. No, carried. Thank you. Okay, and on to question period, and this is an opportunity for the public to ask questions of council on decisions or recommendations made during the course of this meeting. Up to 3 questions will be permitted per speaker, and for those participating electronically, please use the raise your hand feature, and I will call on you as I see your hands. Are there any members of the public who would like to ask questions today? Come on forward.
Hi, my name's Joseph, and Lascaucek. I live here in town, and I wasn't going to say anything today, but since it was in the meeting today, I thought I'd bring it up just as an opinion, and I have a question with it. I think I heard mention of the new sign going up in Port Alberni, and exactly, I'm going to have a look afterwards. I looked on site. It looks great, and I think there was mention of it maybe being placed by Walmart, in fact, because it was within the city boundaries more so. It's trees, a bare rock, would look great in that strip that most people come in and go, this is Port Alberni. Not very pretty looking in the industrial area or the commercial area. Not a great spot. And trees, bears, and a rock. I think the Commerce up at our tourist information has trees, has rocks. And the building itself, I believe, has some of the structure made from logs, I believe. So it just seems like a more fitting spot as far as aesthetics go, I would think. So I like the idea of, if you're along the strip mall that we have there, not a pretty spot, and the development there, we don't even have a sidewalk in front of it. It's a dirt pathway that runs along the mall and is full of places where water gathers. People can't even walk on that. And again, it's sort of like putting a rose in the middle of a parking lot. So just a question, do you all feel that's an appropriate place for, and obviously it's already been voted on, but just look at the aesthetics of it and say, yes, it's within the boundaries, but up there it's just a natural setting, I think. So thank you. Just a comment.
Thank you, Joseph. And I will start by answering. Maybe I just have rose-colored glasses on about our community. But I actually think that, granted, in front of Walmart specifically, that's actually an area that we have reached out to Walmart to ask that they improve. I've always been disappointed with the little shrubs that are half dead in front of Walmart. I think they could have done a lot better on the landscaping there. However, half a block further down in front of Starbucks and that part of the development, I think they've done a beautiful job on the landscaping rocks, the mature trees that are now there, the shrubs, the colors when everything blooms is really quite beautiful, and they've created really a shaded pathway through the trees. It's not a paved sidewalk, but it is a beautiful area. On the other side of the road, when Bank of Montreal and Wendy's were put in, one of the things that the city did request and receive were additional trees, and a sidewalk was put in on that side of the road as well at the time. So granted that doesn't come all the way down to Canadian Tire yet, but that is an area that I would say is a nice entry to the community, where we do tend to see the vast majority of that Upper Johnston Road area well kept. I think that we've got one great example on, the Starbucks kind of area side, and a less good example in front of Walmart. And knowing that there is likely a development going in there, that's one of the things that I certainly will want to see is improvement to that area and continuation of the really nice job that I think has been done on trees, shrubs, and pathway a little bit further down that road. So point taken. I think it actually is a great place for it, but maybe difference of opinions. Any other comments? Councillor Haggard.
Joseph, when we originally talked about this, I was the same thought as you. It should be at the Chamber of Commerce building, because when I'm driving into Port Alberni, when I come around that corner and I see the Chamber of Commerce building, that's when I go, okay, now I'm home. But Mayor Median's convinced me that it should be within city property. So I do agree with her rationale.
Thank you. And another reason that we kind of discussed and decided against the Chamber of Commerce was it's quite a busy area as it is. There's flags, there's signs, there's a lot of Christmas lights. It's nice. There was talk of other signs going up there as well at the time. So I think at the time the Chamber was talking about putting up a Welcome to the Alberni Valley sign, and people were talking about maybe putting the original wooden sign back up, and we just felt like it was an area where we could put a Welcome to Port Alberni sign, and it may end up, we have no control, it may end up getting lost in a cluster of signs. So we felt like this would be largely more appropriate for that reason. This will be the sign. It's not going to have 12 other signs around it. Councillor Sola.
Well, the good thing too about going where we're going to put it by the Walmart is that the development will make it really stand out. And I think it'll be a perfect place for it. Also, we're going to be lighting that area too. So we're not just going to slap that sign down and go, bye. We're going to make it nice there. So I think it's a great place for it.
Over time, no lighting initially. We'll get to the lighting. Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none. Would any other members of the community like to ask questions today? Okay, seeing none, would somebody like to move adjournment? Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Dame. On the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed, meeting adjourned. Thanks everyone for joining.